Om Sam Saraswati Namaha. Namaste. Namaste, everyone. We're on page 95 and we're going to begin the 5th discussion. The Master with Vijay Goswami, December 1882. This is the 5th discussion. When one is instructed by God to do so, one may become a teacher. Vijay to Ramakrishna. I'm so busy with the work of the Brahma Samaj that it's very difficult for me to visit you regularly. Whenever I have time, I come. Ramakrishna. It is very difficult to take on the responsibilities of a teacher. Without being given the authority from God, it is very difficult to teach. If you begin to give instructions without authority from God, people will not listen to you. Such teachings have no power. First, you must do sadhana. In some way, you have to attain to God. When you get the authority from God, then you may lecture. There is a pond in Kathamritam. It's called the Haldar Pond. Every day, people used to go there to answer the calls of nature. All the other people who later came down the stairs to the water to bathe would be greatly offended and would scold these people bitterly and loudly. It had no effect. The next day they would do the same thing. Finally, the owners of the pond came and hung a sign that said, "Commit no nuisance. If you do, you will be punished." After the notice was posted, not one person came again to defile the pond. So if you receive the notice, you can lecture. Without it, no one will listen. After getting authority from God, you can give lectures. When people understand that behind this person is someone with great authority, they treat that individual with greater respect. We are all ordinary mortals. If one has not had the vision of God, then one cannot work effectively as a spiritual teacher. Vijay, great Sir Mahashaya, do not the lectures that are given by the Brahma Samaj assist people in their spiritual journey? Ramakrishna, Sat Chit Ananda, pure existence, consciousness, bliss, is the Guru. He alone gives liberation. Is it easy to liberate people from bondage to the world? Those who have so many desires and attachments to this world and who are spiritually ignorant can only be liberated by God. Other than Sat Chit Ananda, there is nowhere to take refuge. Those who have not attained realization of God, those who have not received instruction and authority from God, and those who have not been given their power by God, do they themselves have even the desire to be liberated from the bonds of this world? One day I was going to answer the calls of nature near the Panchavati when I heard the loud cries of a frog in distress. I could understand that it had been caught by a snake. After quite a while, when I was returning, I was surprised to hear the same frog still croaking very loudly. I went to investigate, and there I found that a small, venomless snake had caught the frog and was trying desperately to swallow it. It could neither swallow the frog, nor could it let it go. This was causing untold suffering for them both. I then thought within my heart, Hori, if a big poisonous snake like a cobra had grabbed him, after only 3 croaks he would have been silent. But a little snake caught him, and that's why the frog is suffering so much, and the snake also is in pain. If you find a true guru, then your ego and attachments will be removed within 3 strokes, as it were. If the guru is not perfect, then the disciple will have pain, and the guru will have pain as well. The egoism of the disciple will not be removed, nor the bonds of worldly relationships. If the guru is not perfect, then the disciple will not be liberated. The 6th discussion. Ramakrishna. So long as you persist in inviting the deluding power of Maya into your life, how can you expect to become free of the bondage of I consciousness? Only if you stop inviting Maya will it be possible. Vijay, great Sir Mahashai, why are we bound in this way? Why can't we see God? Ramakrishna, this egoism, this sense of I that exists in all beings has been bound by the deluding power of Maya. This ego is continually inviting Maya. Maya covers and deludes the ego of every individual. Ramakrishna, humorously, oh, only when I die will all this Maya go. When one fully understands that God alone is the doer, such a one becomes liberated even while in the body. Such liberated beings have no fear. Because of the deluding power of Maya, our I is like a small cloud which obstructs the sun. Because of the cloud, you can't see the sun. When the cloud of egoism is removed, you may see the light of God. If even once you can fully leave your identification with I and mine, egoism, at the feet of the Guru, then you will have the vision of God. Ramchandra was in fact an incarnation of God. Because of Ram's attachment to Sita, Lakshman couldn't believe that Ram was an avatar. He couldn't see that Ram was God himself. Look here. If I hold this towel in front of my face, you can no longer see me. And yet I'm so close. In the same way, God is so close to every one of us, but because of the covering of Maya, we don't see God. Every single individual life form is intrinsically of the nature of unqualified truth, consciousness, and bliss. Because of the covering of egoism caused by Maya, we forget the true nature of each individual. We see only the manifestation of the various external attributes. One after another quality and characteristic comes forth, and the intrinsic nature of the person is hidden. A status-conscious gentleman wearing a cloth with a black border will have a tendency to wander about and play cards and gamble. A person who has been given a pen will have the tendency to look around for some paper and then begin to write about anything he sees. In the same way, egoism and attachment are enhanced by the possession of wealth. When one acquires some money, the nature of a person often changes. There was a member of the priestly caste who used to come here to visit. To all appearances, he was a very humble man. One day, Hridai and I went to Kunagar village on a visit. As we were getting down from the boat, we noticed that same Brahman sitting on the bank of the Ganga, having a breath of fresh air. When he saw us, he called out, "Hey, hello, Thakur! How are you? How's it going? Hey, man, what's happening?" When I heard his words, I chuckled, and I said privately to Hridai, "Oh, Hridai, certainly this man has come into some money." And that's why he's calling to us with such familiarity. Hridai began to laugh. Once there was a frog who found a rupik, and he put it in his hole. Sometime later, an elephant came walking and stepped over the hole. At once, the angry frog burst out of his hole, shaking a stick in fury and crying out, "You have so much nerve! You dare to walk over my hole?" Such is the power of money. It gave birth to the self-importance of the frog. Only if one has the direct experience of the Supreme Divinity can the ego be transcended. Then one is said to have attained to the wisdom of God realization. This is a very difficult achievement. It is said in the Vedas, only when the mind has risen through the 7 levels of consciousness does it enter samadhi. When you achieve samadhi, your ego dissolves. I say once again, this is a very difficult thing to accomplish. Where does the mind usually reside? It resides in the lowest 3 levels of consciousness, in the Muladhara, in the Swadhisthana, and in the Manipura chakras. These 3 levels interacting bind the mind to the objects, attachments, and relationships of the everyday world. When your awareness reaches to the heart level, the Anahata chakra, you perceive the divine light of God. And then when one exclaims, "What is this? What is this?" When your consciousness reaches the Vishuddha chakra, at the level of the throat, you will only want to listen to and speak about God. When your consciousness moves to the Ajna chakra between the brows, you will experience God, salt, chit, among. You will have the vision of divinity with form, and you will have a great desire to embrace that form, but it's not possible. It's like a light shining inside of a glass lantern. It will seem that you are almost able to touch it, but you can't touch the light within the lantern. When your consciousness rises to the Sahasrara chakra, the ego can no longer remain, and you enter samadhi. Vijay. When you rise to the highest level, to the Sahasrara, do you achieve the realization of the Supreme Divinity? What does one perceive in that state? Ramakrishna? Yes. What you will experience then cannot be expressed in words. Once a ship has sunk in the vast ocean, it can never return. Even if you organize a search, you will gain no information about what has happened to that ship. Once a doll made out of salt went to measure the depth of the ocean. As soon as the salt doll dove into the ocean, it was submerged in the water. It dissolved and could never return. How deep is the ocean? Who can tell us? Whoever enters the deep waters of God consciousness will dissolve and mix with the oneness of the ocean. They are not able to return and give a report. At the 7th level, your mind and your egotism are destroyed. You enter samadhi. What will you understand from that experience? No one can say. Ramakrishna. The ego doesn't say there's an evil eye or there's an I who is a servant. The I that does this whole worldly business and runs behind desires and attachments is the ego. It makes a distinction between the life force and the soul of humanity. If you throw a stick on top of the water, then you'll see two parts of the water. One on this side and one on that side. There is only one body of water, but because of the presence of the stick, you see two parts. Egoism is that kind of stick. If you take the stick out of the water, then you see only one body of water. Actually, who am I? This little ego I. Who says I? The ego is always present. I have so much wealth. I have become such an important person. If they catch a thief, the first thing they do is grab the money. Then they beat the thief. They don't let him go. All the guards of the area call the police and they give him great pains. The little ego is saying, doesn't he know that he stole money from me? He has such nerve. He took my money. Vijay. If the ego does go, is it possible to live in the world? Can you have samadhi and have the ego at the same time? Is following the path of jnana, knowledge, enough until you reach samadhi? If in the path of devotion a little egoism remains, then is not the path of wisdom superior? Ramakrishna. Only a few people who reach samadhi vanquish the ego entirely. Usually it doesn't go completely. Discriminate 1,000 times and yet the ego returns in devious ways. If you cut down a banyan tree and you come back tomorrow, you'll find that it has sprung a new shoot. If you meditate in a lonely, solitary place and the ego doesn't go, then make that so-and-so a servant of God. Oh God, you are the Supreme Lord and I am your servant. Stay in this attitude. I am the servant. I am a devotee. With this attitude, the ego will be harmless. If you eat too many sweets, you'll get a stomachache. But not if you eat rock candy. So here he's saying it's too sweet. If you're calling yourself, I am the God, I have no ego, that's sweet. But if you eat rock candy, hey, I'm your servant, I'm a devotee. That's enough. It's still sweet. So if you eat too sweet, you get a stomachache. The path of wisdom is extremely difficult. If the attachment to the body doesn't go, then you cannot achieve jnana. In this age of darkness, there are many responsibilities and duties in life. This understanding is knowledge of the body, but knowledge of the ego doesn't go. That's why in this age of darkness, the path of devotion is best. Devotion is the easier path. If you have great sincerity of heart, repeat God's name and pray to God. And then you will attain to God realization. There is no doubt of this. You can draw a line on water with your finger and there appear to be two sides of the water. But the line drawn on the water doesn't last for very long. The ego that is a servant of God, the I who is a devotee, the ego who is a child of God, what is that? These forms of ego are harmless, like the lines formed on water. The seventh discussion. Ramakrishna. The highest ideal of perfection in this age is union with God through devotion. Union through the path of knowledge is extremely difficult. It is best to keep the I of a servant, a devotee, or of a child of God. Vijay. Oh, great sir, Mahasaya. You are instructing me to leave and renounce all inferior works, all evil karma. Is there no fault in retaining the I who is a servant? Ramakrishna. No, the servant I means I am a servant of God. I am a devotee of God. There is no fault in having such an ego. Through that, ultimately, one will attain God. Vijay. In one who has the ego of a servant, what will his anger and desire be like? Ramakrishna. If you have the right attitude, then you have no attachment to your anger or to your desires. After attaining the highest realization of God, even if this I who is a servant or this I who is a devotee remains, that individual can do no evil work nor cause harm to others. After touching the philosopher's stone, iron becomes gold. If you touch a sword to the stone, the iron sword becomes a golden sword. It remains in the form of a weapon, but it can't harm anyone. Even after attaining God, if the ego remains as a servant or as a devotee, one is free from personal or selfish desires and anger. One can do harm to none. As the coconut tree grows, it sends out its branches, which afterwards shrivel up as the tree goes bigger. Only a line remains where the branches were. By seeing the marks on the tree, you can see how much the tree has grown. In the same way, the ego of those who have attained to the realization of God remains only as a mark, as an indication that the ego was once there. They have no attachment to any desires or anger. They become like little children. Even as little children are endowed with the qualities or gunas of sattva, rajas, and tamas, yet they are not attached or bound by those qualities. A child will remain attached to its toys and happily play with them, and then suddenly leave those toys and move on to something else without a second thought or look backwards. You can place a cloth worth a lot of money and a doll worth very little before a child who will pay no attention to the cloth but be very much attracted to the doll. With great force, the child will say, "I won't give it to you. My father has bought it for me." A child has no awareness of who is important and who is unimportant. He has no concept of caste or pride or birth. If his mother says that is your big brother, the child will believe it, even if it's not true. A child has neither self-consciousness nor hatred. He has no sense of purity or impurity. Even after attaining samadhi, a devotee remains as a servant of God. He thinks only, "I am the servant and you are my Lord. I am your devotee and you are the supreme divinity." This is the attitude of a devotee. Even after attaining to realization of God, this attitude remains. All the ego does not go. By practicing this attitude, we attain God. This is called union through the path of devotion. If you take hold of this path of devotion, you can attain to the goal of the path of wisdom, jnana, as well. The Supreme Lord is all-powerful. If He wills it, He can even bestow jnana upon us. The devotee doesn't long for the supreme wisdom. He says, "I want to remain a servant and you are my Lord. I am a child and you are my mother, Ma." This is the attitude he wants to maintain. Vijay. Do those who practice non-dualistic Vedanta also attain to the supreme wisdom? Ramakrishna. Yes, you can reach him through the practice of non-dualism. This is called the path of wisdom. This path is extremely difficult. I have already explained to you about the 7 levels of consciousness. Bhur, Bhuva, Shva, Maha, Jana, Tapa, Satyam. When your consciousness arrives at the 7th level, you go into samadhi. Brahman, the supreme divinity, is the one true reality. This entire perceivable universe is false, transitory. When you discriminate in this manner, your mind dissolves and you go into samadhi. In this age of darkness, this Kali Yuga, people have a different attitude. Only Brahman, the supreme reality, is true. All this perceivable universe is false. How can one living in Kali Yuga understand that? As long as you have attachment to your body, this understanding cannot come. I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the 24 principles of the Sankhya philosophy. I am beyond pleasure and pain. What are disease and grief and old age? What do these mean to me? This understanding in this age of darkness is very difficult. You may reason in this way, yet this body consciousness returns to you again and again. It's like when you cut down a banyan tree. A new shoot comes up in no time. The awareness of the body does not go. That is why in this age the path of devotion is very good. I enjoy eating sugar. I don't want to become sugar. This is the attitude. I don't have any desires for myself. Some people like to walk around saying, I am Brahman, the supreme divinity. I myself prefer to keep the attitude, you are God, and I am your servant. It is more fun to play between the 5th and 6th levels of consciousness. I don't like to stay at the 7th level very long. It doesn't have the rasa, not the taste. I want to sing the names and recite the glories of God. That has great flavor and is so very sweet. It is great fun and a privilege to do selfless service for the Lord. Look at the waves on the Ganga. They don't call a wave the Ganga. I am that. This attitude is not appropriate for Kali Yuga. As long as awareness of the body and the belief that I am this body last, one cannot attain union with God. One can't go forward and soon falls from the path. By such an inappropriate attitude, you cheat others and you cheat yourself. You don't even understand your own situation. There are 2 kinds of devotion. Only those who successfully follow the supreme type of devotion find the way to attain the vision of God. If you just practice the ordinary kind of devotion in order to impress others, you will not find God. Until you have a real loving devotion, it is impossible to reach God. There is another name for loving devotion. It's called rag bhakti. Until you have that real, intense love, you can't find God. You can't attain God. If you just like God a little bit, you can't achieve the highest divinity. There is another kind of devotion called Vaidhi bhakti. Such a devotee says, I do this much job. I have to fast. I have to go on pilgrimage. I have to offer this many articles in my worship. This is called Vaidhi Bhakti, the love which binds. If you practice in this way for a long time, you may develop love for God, but so long as you don't have the real loving devotion, you can't hope to have the vision of God. He wants your sincere love. When you have that kind of love, your worldly tendencies just vanish. When you give 100% of your mind, you will find God. Occasionally, some people develop true longing and sincere love just on their own accord. They are among the eternally realized souls. They are perfect from their youth and grow up as attained souls. From their childhood, they cry to God just like Prahlad, who had such great devotion. If you want a cool breeze, you must wave the fan back and forth. In order to get the air, you need the fan. You can't just say that love for God will come with no effort. All this japa, all this austerity and fasting are very necessary. They are the fan. When you develop real, sincere love for God, when your love comes of itself, all the japa and other forms of tapasya will fall off naturally. Then you can just bask in the cool breeze. The fan is no longer required. If you become intoxicated with the love of God, who will study the Vedas? What need have you to study the Vedas? Until you attain to such love of God, your devotion is unripe devotion. When you attain to such love, it becomes ripe devotion. Kacha or paka. Who has unripe devotion? Those who are not interested in hearing the teachings about God have unripe devotion. When you have ripe devotion, you always want to contemplate God's words. If you put a dark cloth over a photograph, you can't see the picture. When the cloth is removed, you can see the picture clearly. If you don't have pure love for God, then you can't understand the instructions about God. Get the picture? Vijay. Oh, great sir, Mahasha. In order to attain to God, must one then have right devotion? Ramakrishna. Yes, only through devotion can you have the vision of God. You have to have right devotion. You have to have loving devotion. You have to have extreme love with your devotion. That kind of devotion brings God to you. Just as a child loves its mother and the mother loves a child, just as a wife loves her husband, when that pure love comes, then there is no more illusion of this world and no attraction to the illusion. Only compassion remains. Then this world of objects and relationships seems like a foreign country. Then you understand that it is only the field where I do my work, my karma bhumi. Just as when a rural village person comes for employment to Kolkata, Kolkata is where he does his work. We have to remain in Kolkata, as it were, in order to do our karma. When you attain pure love for God, then all your attachments to this karma dissolve. You may do your work in the city, but your whole mind is back at your home in the village. When you truly love God, then you will only think of God. All these worldly thoughts completely dissolve. This discussion is about the vision of God. Without God's grace, one cannot have the vision of God. Vijay. How does one attain the vision of God? Ramakrishna. Without purification of the mind, it is impossible. As long as desires and attachments reside in the mind will remain impure. If a sewing needle is embedded in mud, a magnet will not be able to attract the needle. If you wash the mud from the needle, the magnet will attract it at once. In a similar way, one can wash away the dirt of the mind with tears of devotion. Oh God, I will never do that again. If you can pray sincerely with tears in your eyes, all the impurities will be washed away. Then, just as a sewing needle is drawn to a magnet, your mind will be drawn into samadhi. Then you will have a vision of God. You may try 1,000 times, but without God's grace, you can't hope to have the vision of God. Without grace, no one can have the direct, intimate perception of the divine. Is it easy to earn God's grace? Easy to earn divine grace? One must renounce every trace of I consciousness, the thought that I am the doer. By relying on one's intellectual understanding alone, one can never realize God. Imagine a room full of valuables and outside a guard standing at the door of that room. If the owner of the house were to say to someone, "Sir, please go to that room and bring all the valuables that are in the room to me," the person would reply, "Wait a minute. There's a guard protecting that room. If I go there, what will happen to me?" In a similar way, there are those who have protected their hearts so well with the thought, "I am the doer," that God cannot easily enter those hearts. When one has received God's grace, one can then perceive divinity. This is called the light of wisdom. Just one ray of God's infinite light has illumined the whole universe. That's why we can see and perceive all that we know. We learn so much from the various experiences of life. If God were to shine his light even once on his own self, we would then know God. There was a gentleman who went out into the night with a lantern. He was an Englishman, a foreigner. No one knew this because no one could see his face. He held up the lantern so he could see all the other faces, but no one could see his face. If anyone wanted to see who that gentleman was, he would have to request him, "Please, sir, take your light and shine it on your own face." In the same way, if you want to see God, you will have to pray to God, "Please, God, just once, shine your divine light on your own self so I can see you. Then only will you have the vision of God." If there is no light burning within a house at night, it is very difficult to move around inside that house. That's why one must illumine the space within the heart. If the heart is illumined by the light of divine wisdom, then one will perceive the face of supreme divinity. Vijay then brought medicine for Sri Ramakrishna and gave it to him. Ramakrishna took the medicine with a little water. Ramakrishna is the ocean of compassion. Vijay was not wealthy and could not afford the carriage or boat fare to visit the master. Every now and then, Ramakrishna sent devotees to invite him to come. Once he sent Balaram, and Balaram then paid the carriage fare for both. Another time, Balaram brought Vijay and 9 other devotees to Dakshineshwar to visit the master. After an evening with Ramakrishna, Balaram took all the devotees to his home in Ban Bazar. They landed at Annapurna Ghat and walked to Balaram's home. M was also present. It was the 4th day of the bright fortnight, and it was winter. As the moon rose into the sky, all were remembering the inspiring words of the Master and contemplating his beautiful form. In this way, they made their way each to his own home. And that completes chapter 4. Do we have any questions?
Swamiji, I have a question from page 100, Swamiji.
Yes.
There's a discussion about the various chakras and levels of consciousness. For example, it says that when you reach the heart level, you perceive the divine light of God.
Yes.
Now, when we do our Nitya Karma, for example, puja of heart, in my case, obviously, I don't perceive the divine light of God.
You hear the divine sound of God. Because in that sound comes the light. And they're all one within the Anahata, the Nada-Sakti. That's where all the divine forms are perceived. So as we perform our Bhuta Shuddhi, and we say, and you get to the heart chakra, you're feeling a vibration and you're hearing a divine sound, and the sound is permeating the heart chakra. And that's the Anahata. That's the Nada Shakti. That's the subtle sound which you hear inside. And when you hear it, you just close your eyes and see the light of God. And complete the journey. And that's your Bhuta Shuddhi. The purification of the elements, the Mool Bija of each chakra, the root Bij mantra, the seed of each chakra. We call those out with the subtle nod and listen to the vibration within. And then you perceive the light. Are there other questions?
Swamiji, question from Ravi in North Carolina.
Namaste, Ravi.
Pranam Swamiji. Should one maximize the time they direct their energy to Agya Chakra and Sahasra, or should they also be focused on the lower chakras?
Get control, Ravi. Get control over each chakra and then move to the next. It's certainly you'll want to stay higher as long as you can, because that's where you get the highest vision. But do get control over each chakra as you move through them. Don't just breeze through them without assuming your authority over that chakra, over that sacred space. Don't just tour and look out the window at the scenery. Move through each chakra and get control. Feel the vibration within, and then move to the next one. And then when you get to the top, and when you get to the Agya Chakra and into the Sahasrara, you will move into samadhi of its own accord. Just like the sewing needle is being attracted by the magnet. Just in a similar way, Ravi, you will be attracted into samadhi. It won't be any effort of your part.
Swamiji, a question from Nanda from San Jose.
Namaste, Nanda.
Pranam Swamiji, this is in response to your suggestion yesterday on looking at sadhana as the end goal. Please help me understand how I can transition from looking at sadhana as something I have to do every day, whether I want to do it or not, to being genuinely happy as you are in looking at sadhana as the goal in itself. How do you do it?
Nandama, first thing is you want to look at work as something you have to do. And sadhana is something that frees you from going to work. And therefore, it's to be desired even more than going to your job. Because when you go to your job, I'm willing to bet that if they didn't pay you, you wouldn't want to go there. So it's something that you gotta do in order to get what you gotta have. And you got it. And all the ganas are there. So sadhana is something you don't gotta do, you wanna. You give up the ganas and take on the wanas. And that's what makes it a joy. It makes it it's not something I have to get out of the way to get something. It's what I want to do. As soon as you convince yourself, then sadhana becomes the joy of your life. It becomes such a privilege. So start working on convincing yourself.
Question from Kumari from Vallejo.
Namaste, Kumari Ma.
Pranam Swamiji, how does one know a true guru? Is a spiritual teacher the same as guru? Can a spiritual seeker have several gurus and teachers in one lifetime?
Absolutely. We can have several teachers and several gurus. The guru of the gurus is Lord Shiva. He's the guru. God is the guru. Gu karas tvandakaras charu karas tejas uchate. The syllable gu is the darkness and the syllable ru is who illuminates the light. Shiva is the guru of all the gurus, and you need the little gurus to get to the big guru. But your love and devotion and attention must be to the big guru, and your appreciation and respect is to the little gurus who helped you along the way to get to the big guru. And then Om Guru Vyo Namo, Om Param Guru Vyo Namo, Om Parapara Guru Vyo Namo, Om Parameshri Guru Vyo Namo. I bow to all the gurus. Every day, every time I sit down. Thanks a lot, guys and girls, for bringing me here where I can sit with the big guru. You taught me how to sit with the guru of the gurus. And I respect you and appreciate you and bow to you and give you my highest devotion because you got me here. And thanks a lot, guys.
Question from Wendy from New Jersey.
Namaste, Wendy Ma.
Namaste, Swamiji.
Namaste, Sam.
Swamiji, sometimes I feel more devotion and connection to the divine in my daily activities than when I'm doing japa. Are there many ways to experience raga bhakti? Can you please tell us more about raga bhakti? Thank you.
Oh, you've been in love. And you know what that raga bhakti is about. And there's now how much can you describe what it feels like to be in love? You can tell what you did. You can tell but you can't quantify it. You can describe what the external manifestations of the experience were about. We were walking hand in hand or arm in arm or just staring into one another's eyes. But you can't describe or define the intensity of that communion. In the same way, it's impossible to describe raga bhakti. But you know when you got it. It's a priori knowledge, Wendy. You know it. You know when you're in love. Just as intimately as it is surely while your heart is fluttering. My heart goes pitter-patter.
Swamiji, question from Vishweshwar from Napa.
Namaste, Vish.
What does it mean to have mastery over a chakra? Swamiji, you were talking about taking control.
Oh, mastery. Mastery over a chakra means that I can control the attitudes which emanate from that chakra. I can control the attitudes and I have an awareness and I can change that attitude At will, because I am the master of that chakra. I have the authority. I have the adhikar to change the attitude of that chakra. And that's what it means to develop mastery over a chakra. When I feel any attitude coming up within me, I can detect the source of that attitude, the resonance of that attitude. I can know the mool mantra of that attitude, the mool mantra of the source of that energizes that attitude, and I can get control of it and change it. It was that chapter in the Kashyap Sutras that we had discussed with the Bij mantras of several attitudes that we want to get control of and several attitudes that we want to inspire to replace them. Getting control and mastery of a chakra means being able to change my attitude.
Swamiji, question from Janitri from Virginia.
Namaste, Janitri.
Janitri asks, if the ego is so powerful, then why does it forget from time to time, from form to form, or lifetime to lifetime, what it is?
Oh, Janitri, it's the nature of the ego to create this sense of I, which is separating, defining differences, and making barriers, and making limitations. So that's its nature. And it's our desire as devotees to train that ego I to keep saying, I am a servant. I am a devotee. I'm a child of God. That's enough for me. I don't have to be the most important character in the script. I don't have to be right. I'm a servant. I'm a child of God. I'm trying to do the best I can to serve my master as faithfully as possible. Now, what is in the best interest of this objective? If I could ask that question every time I feel anger rising up within me, if I could try and answer that question or ask myself that question every time I feel that I'm right and I want to defend my position, I don't have to be right. I just want the work done to God's satisfaction. Now, let's see where we can find the satisfying place where God will put us.
Swamiji, question from Kumari. On page 97, Sri Ramakrishna talks about the Guru. Can Swamiji comment on how the Guru removes disciples' ego and attachments? Does spiritual practice play a strategic part in this process, or is God's grace more important to dissolve ego?
Remember, the term that we are using for grace, Kumari, is kripa. Kri means karo, do. Pa means power, get. The grace is, as you do, so shall you get. Do and get. So now the grace of the Guru or the grace of God descends on a disciple when the disciple says, gee, there's an example I want to follow. There's something new I can employ in my life. There's something, a new attitude I can inculcate into my bhava, into my being, into my way of discerning the values of this world. Now that's grace. To get such an inspiration. Maybe I'll become more learned. Maybe I'll become more devoted. Maybe I'll become more serviceable. Maybe I'll try a little harder. Maybe I won't quit so easily. Maybe I won't start and dig many shallow wells. Maybe I'll stick to one project and finish it and then move to the next one. Maybe I can find something new to change my attitude. And that's the grace. And as soon as I get that inspiration, then I start changing. And I make myself into a disciple, reflecting the image of the Guru. That's the goal.
Swamiji, on page 98, Thakur Ramakrishna says that we keep inviting Maya. How do we stop inviting her?
Make her divine. Make her divine. Maya, I know you are all the objects and relationships in this creation, but now I perceive you as the Divine Mother. And stop showing me all your different forms. I just want to see this one form. The one form of Maya which graces the altar of my devotion. Just stop. Om Sam Saraswati Namaha. Namaste.